My friends, we like to believe that we are in control, that our choices, whether it's what we eat, how we feel, what we think, comes from our conscious values, our reasoning. But the truth is that much of what we do is not actually coming from our own volition. Believe it or not, it is shaped by invisible forces coming from both inside of our bodies, but also outside from our environment, and getting visibility into what those things are so that you can take your power back is what we're talking about on today's episode of Love, Happiness, and Success. I'm your host, Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and welcome. If this is your first time joining us, the show is for growth-oriented people like you who are willing to do the work to develop themselves so that they can have more love, happiness, and success in your life. So, welcome. And if we're not yet friends, I hope you connect with me. You can track me down on Instagram, YouTube, and of course, follow the show so you don't miss any amazing episodes like this one we're having today with my special guest. Dr. Tatyana El-Kour is a registered dietitian, a nutritionist, a media psychologist, and global strategy advisor. Lots of things. Her work sits at the crossroads between technology, physiology, nutrition, and systems. And she's here today to help peel back the curtain and help us all see these invisible influencers that we might not even know about. Dr. Tatyana, hello.
Hi, Dr. Lisa. I'm very thrilled to be here with you. Thank you for this lovely introduction.
Well, I am so excited to talk with you because you have such a unique and fascinating perspective because of all these different parts of the human experience you have been exploring. And from this, have come to the conclusion that there are all kinds of things that are influencing people from the inside, from the outside. We have a lot to talk about. Where should we even begin? I mean, let's talk about inside. Can we talk about inside?
Well, I want to start with something we don't usually think about. Algorithms are like your invisible nutritionist, given the, the nutrition perspective. So, except instead of guiding us to balance, they often slip us into the digital junk food. So, you know, perhaps picture this, it's 9 p.m., you're tired, you're scrolling on your phone, and then you've got an app called DoorDash or Uber Eats, that suggests your favorite burgers and fries. And then TikTok feeds you those lovely clips that match your restless mood because you're tired. And Netflix autoplays the next show for you. You don't even plan to watch it, but Netflix is nudging you to actually watch it. So none of this is random. Three different platforms have studied your behavior very well. When you're hungry, you're stressed, or you're bored, and they nudged you. And so here's the twist, if this invisible hand doesn't just shape your meals, it shapes your mood, it shapes your relationships, and even how you see yourself from the inside out.
Ugh, okay. So this is why I think you're so fascinating. So your background, you're a nutritionist, a dietitian, a psychologist, a media psychologist. And what I'm hearing you say is that in these quite banal moments, like the one I had last night where I plopped down on the couch and like start flipping through things to watch. And I'm like, am I hungry? I might be hungry.
Yeah. So it usually those apps, like for example, the DoorDash or Uber Eats, they predict your cravings they combine your timing of the day, your GPS data, even your location, your past orders, and then how you feel at that particular moment
How do
using
they know how I
emojis.
feel? Because honestly, last night, like I had this, I was like, I don't know, I'm hungry. I don't even know what I want. I don't want anything. We don't have any food. Like what's starting to with my husband, like, what should we eat? I don't know. What do you want to have? Like that whole thing. And so there's this algorithm who is paying close attention to whatever is
Totally.
happening
So
right there. Uh
your
huh.
clicks, your pauses, even the time of the day, if you linger on a particular ad or a picture or a photo or even an angry clip, it'll feed you. it will feed you more of that. So, and of course, with your emojis, for example, if you're happy watching this content and you've spent more than 30 seconds on a particular food picture or a choice of a restaurant, and so the system continues to nudge you on that front. So that's where it can predict your behavior. And so by it combines the date, the day of the time, the GPS data, your emotions at that particular time, even your past orders. So you probably would not have been the first time to order this pizza or this burger or to feel that way with your husband. So research even shows how, the smartphone signals can forecast craving hours before they even happen. And so I think I would like to give you an example globally from Singapore. The government built an app called Healthy 365, which doesn't just count your steps, it actually nudges you towards the healthier food choice. So it gives you the steps that are required for you to get to a healthier food choice that is culturally relevant to you as well, instead of suggesting, for example, if you're on diet, a protein bar, it could suggest a culturally fit meal. So if you're from Asia, it could give you a rice-based meal or a noodles-based meal that is healthy, that fits into your personal profile, and also that works with you. So in a nutshell, the algorithms are kind of your invisible companion. So they are really vigilant and observant about how you behave, the way you look, even your eyesight. So some of the apps can actually have eye trackers. Some others can have the sensations, so sensory. So, for example, if you're wearing your smartwatch or the body temperature that you have can actually be fed into the system. And so, depending on how advanced, and yes, or the ring, absolutely, which is exciting to wear. It's exciting to know, but it's also freaky. Yeah, it's freaky to know that somebody is actually nudging you to do what you probably don't want to do.
Okay, can I ask you a question? And this is going to sound like semi psychotic conspiracy theorist. Like I'm one of those people that has like the wall with the 8x10 color glassy photos and like the pieces of yarn connecting all the things. Like, let's just go there for a second. I am curious to know, given your involvement in APA Division 46 media psychology, I mean, like with what you've learned and understood about the way some of these technologies work and the interface between them and our brains and our behavior and the psychology of influence, is how um, much information is being absorbed all the time and how interconnected these things are. Like, so for example, I have a close friend who is hilarious, and she is very into cruise porn. She is watching YouTube videos about cruise ships and planning vacations and, always wanting to talk about cruises. She is a cruiser. She goes on a couple of these a year. And so sometimes she'll send me things that have like, a cruise ship that literally has an amusement park with roller coasters on the boat. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not really a cruise enthusiast, but like it's kind of fun to talk about, right? And so she was at my house not too long ago. And of course, we were talking about her upcoming cruise. And then I started getting messages from my little Amazon Alexa thing that sits at the counter, like, here's a cruise with a roller coaster on the deck of the boat. You want to come? And I started getting mailers sent to my house. And like, this is not part of my life. And so what I'm thinking now is this thing or something was tracking this conversation. And there are a number of suspects. I have the Alexa thing sitting on my counter. I have my iPhone with my Siri app. I have, text messages back and forth where she's sending me like, look, this one is like a shopping mall and there's a hot tub in every room. I mean, like I'm getting those from her. Like, where are the points of information? Because it's not a specific app, like I'm not using the cruise app, right? I'm just like existing in my home. Where is it taking this information? What do you suspect?
It's the key mechanisms of any tool that you are using, the tech gadget or tool, is behavioral tracking, it's emotional targeting, and of course, it's the predictive analytics. So those are kind of the three things. If I want to simplify them, your behavior is being tracked, whether it is Siri, whether it is your smartwatch or smartphone or any other tool you are using. And also, and if you are already wire transferred, they're all talking to each other. So I learned about Lisa's behavior, that she was actually interested in the cruise. She spent a minute to look out over the cruise ad. And then, but she spent more time looking at the amusement park versus the food. Um, and so it studies how you are interacting with the actual content. So as
So,
I mentioned, yeah.
Okay. So I'm getting advertisements with a roller coaster on top of a cruise ship, as opposed to like the gooey hamburger. Like I could have gotten that ad, but it's like profiling me. But I think the thing that freaks me out is just like the relationship, like I tap on a YouTube video that my friend sent to me about some ridiculous cruise, and I'm getting mail to my house. So let's take this into something that does actually matter, because the roller coaster on a boat thing does not matter. But so your background, so you are a dietitian, a nutritionist, then you got into psychology and then media psychology. And I know that you've done a lot of research around and spent a lot of time with people who are needing to make changes to the food that they eat, what they put into their bodies, because they are actually experiencing negative consequences and negative health outcomes. And we will be talking about what some of those internal factors are that change the way people think, feel, and behave that they don't fully know about. But you've had a front row seat to the impact of some of these influencing behaviors on what winds up happening to people's health as a result because of particularly food choices. Can you take us into what this looks like, and like what's really on the line here? What's going on?
Yeah, so maybe I can, think about, you're being, the autopilot moments, you're being steered. So a lot of people like do the doom scrolling until midnight. They're just scrolling, they keep ordering the same meal, because it's the first option that keeps popping up in their app. They watch the next episode because it's the autoplay that decided for them. And that's not a free choice, that's reinforcement. And so those nudges are often designed for profit, And in Singapore, for example, I mentioned the Healthy 365 app, which is designed to nudge people on a public health behavior. Now, what really happens is, or what I've seen in my practice is, there's a health halo effect. So in London, when walking in the streets of London, I saw parents, bypassing fresh fruit for gluten-free gummies because the label sounded virtuous. In Nairobi, children could sing every line of a sugary drink jungle just before they could read a nutrition label. This was fascinating to me because the way people were engaged in that content told me that they are being under the influence, not rather they're being steered. And so, and another piece is the body ideal effect. In for example, in Cairo, you would see billboards with ultra lean models that do not really inspire health, but they push teens towards skipping meals. And so research confirms that, the more you're exposed to media that increases your body dissatisfaction and disordered eating, the disordered eating risk becomes higher. And then you get the diet fads that add more layers. So you spoke about the cruise ships. Well, if I am interested in a low carb diet, then I'm going to be bombarded with messaging that clash with my own culture, for example, where a low carb diet, if in Asian cultures that are based on rice, and rice symbolizes abundance and family, then I'm stripped away of that and being told that this is the bad food for you, and then it gives you suggestions and offers alternatives, and then teaches you how you can actually live your life rice free. or bread free or carb free. And the same message goes to low fat, or even to, the most exciting piece is the intermittent fasting, which I've seen quite a number of videos on, because it's especially complex, even in some of the cultures that I've worked with, that, where fasting has a deep religious tradition or rooting, people did not really relate to their religious backing, and they only related to the modern online trends. And so, which is repackaging fasting or intermittent fasting as a weight loss or as a productivity nudge. While, and the missing piece is that you're being reinforced with that piece of information as you engage more with it. You get a greater reinforcement and greater exposure, and the research tells you otherwise, but you don't have anything from the system that gives you that filter. So the American Heart Association, for example, found that people who eat in very short window times, especially in intermittent fastings, where some people would actually eat only within a framing of 4 hours or fewer than 8 hours, if we want to go as broad as 8 hours, but they actually would have a higher risk of death, of heart disease death, and that warning rarely appears in algorithmic feeds, and which, it always prefers the dramatic before and after stories. So the lesson is, diet trends really aren't inherently good or bad. It's not about the diet trend. It's all about context and about the content you're engaging with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think what you're saying too is really just highlighting how easy it is to get sucked into this reality distortion vortex where there's this information that somebody has a mercenary interest in putting in front of you, but this information is, just what you start seeing and then seeing more of it, and that it is shaping your identity. It is maybe unmooring you from cultural anchors that previously had been important, and it is also reorienting your narrative around what people do, the healthy way to eat that may or may not be based in reality, but that when you have all of this information coming to you, it becomes very difficult to make truly informed choices, is what I'm
Correct.
hearing you say.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter, you think you had made the right choice when you were actually steered, geared
Yeah.
towards making that choice. So
Yeah.
you're fooling yourself that, I'm having the control, I'm in the control seat, when in fact the system is working to understand how you are engaging with the content, whether through the feeds you share or the likes, the hearts you give, and even the behavior you do, as the
Yeah.
action you do, in fact.
Right.
So if you're seeing pizza on top or burgers, and then
Hmm.
you order the burgers and you eat them, and then you score 5 for the burgers you had, and then
Yeah.
you tell them, like, I feel uneasy, I'm angry, I fought with my husband, well, here is another fried ice cream for you, and then it's just constantly feeding
Well,
you with
and let's
that
yeah.
variety.
And
Yeah.
let's go to that, because I think, I am not a heavily online person. I mean, I guess I am. I'm looking at news and stuff like that, but not like a huge social media person. But I think it is the environmental surveillance, like the fact that I'm wearing an Aura ring and I'm standing in my kitchen, like laughing with a friend about something, and it's still coming for me. Is when I'm like, wow. But let's go into the emotional pieces, because I heard you say earlier, and I also had the great pleasure of attending a phenomenal training that you gave at the APA convention in Denver not too long ago, where you were talking about how these algorithms know how you are feeling emotionally hours before you actually do. And they can also predict your behavior hours in advance. Like, they know before you do when you're going to want something to eat, for example. Can you take us into this predictive piece and give us some visibility into how they can understand how we're feeling and then predict our behavior because of that?
Okay, sure. So I think what we normally see, or you asked me the question before, like, how does it Like, how does the system know how I'm behaving or how I'm feeling? So there is what we call sentiment analysis. So the system can analyze how you're feeling at that particular moment. And then there are certain AI tools that are emotionally aware. So those tools are adept in really tracking your emotions in real time to align and bring you the content that aligns with your emotional state.
How? Like tone of voice? Like,
There are various aspects. So what we have noted is some of the factors that influence is watch time. It's the time you watch a particular episode, likes, comments, and even your search history and the emojis that you use. So see those things, do you really think about them when you
no.
not really. I mean, nobody even think about those factors. And so emotion aware, sometimes even the music that you're listening to. So there are certain reels with a particular tone of music. So if you're engaging with that content, you're spending more time because they track whether the music has actually had an influenced the way you are engaging with the content and engaging as a user experience. And we do have that research also by several researchers since 2023, 2024, and also 2025, that the AI tools have the ability to adapt the content according to how you engage with it. So the point is, it gives you that feeling or sensation of personalization, which in fact it does. It really studies your behavior, interacts with your own sentiment, and analyzes such data, and then it starts, making sense of that data. Oh, so you are interacting. Your watch time is more during the evening time when you are tired out of back from work, or when you have had a fight with your husband, and then you tend to order pizzas while doing that, and then the music that you're listening to, and then maybe you've shared it, or maybe you liked a particular aspect, or you commented on a reel. It makes sense of all this data, puts it all together, and brings in its own recommendation that, oh, since you are not feeling well, you should continue not to feel well, because I need you to continue to stay engaged with me.
Oh, say more about that. Okay, so many data points. I sent a poop emoji to my husband. I'm listening to angry music. Okay, so it knows where I am. It's got my number. But then what you're saying is that it's like taking all these data points, it's going into a hive mind, and then it's like, let's keep Lisa here. Tell us
Exactly.
more about that. What is that about?
Yeah, so if we want to dive into how AI platforms really influence consumer
Let's go all
psychology,
the way.
the
Yes.
YouTube, Netflix, TikTok, watch yourself on
Uh-huh.
those platforms. They don't just respond to what you click. They learn your emotional patterns. So these platforms track your behaviors. Like, again, as I said, watch time is an indicator of your emotion. Scrolling speed is another, and interaction style. And then they build your psychometric profile. So, and you've mentioned the word profile earlier. So they start building your psychometric profile. So according to most recent evidence, I think there was a most recent study by researchers Habib and Nityanand. They looked at sentiment-aware recommendation systems. And those systems usually intensify negative emotional states. So those researchers found that people engage more with negatively emotional content like anger, showing anger or grievance. And their study showed how, stimulated users with different emotional profiles were fed progressively more emotionally charged content. So irrespective of your psychometric profile, you are being fed the negatively emotional content. So they're trying to steer you towards a particular rhythm because this is how the system has been trained.
Okay, but why? So you're saying that they are intentionally trying, right?
Yes.
Intentionally trying to activate us, get us riled up physiologically, like activated. What is the motivation? How does that serve their diabolical purpose?
So this is called affective alignment in psychology. The
Okay.
system reflects your mood, keeping you emotionally hooked. And that's what they want. Their key goal, like their success is that you're emotionally hooked. While this might sound harmless to you, like I don't care, even though But you realize that it can reduce your emotional variability and encourage more, mood stable echo chambers. And it can go deeper, by the way. So, platforms, as you engage more, they reward engagement through dopamine driven loops. So dopamine is our happy hormone. So each video or post activates a feedback mechanism, your likes, your autoplay, or algorithmic reinforcement. And that specifically in psychology mimics the operant conditioning. So increasing your compulsive use and decreasing attention span. Boom, that's what they want. They want you to be increasingly engaged with content without thinking compulsively, while also decreasing your attention to any kind of detail, whether, that kind of a moment where you're like, is this good for me or not? You don't even have
Critical
that.
thinking. Like, no, we're not doing
No.
that.
And so even other research
Okay.
found out that collaborative filtering systems, though, so it's not only you, Lisa, who is engaging with AI. It's me, it's everyone in the globe. They also contribute to echo chambers. So they narrow your exposure and reinforce habitual content engagement. This is very serious for people who are emotionally sensitive or who have emotional or emotion dysregulation or have eating disorder risk or attention deficit. All those aspects are critical because it feeds into kind of the same loop.
Well,
So
let's go there. Here comes a psychologist hat
yes.
getting pulled on, and what is the impact? So they're trying real hard to get you upset and then keep you engaged in your upsetness. And no, don't think about that. Nope. And like hold you in that space for holding on to your attention. That is part of their business model. But what is the impact on people who, as you say, might be vulnerable or fragile emotionally in terms of their disordered eating? Like, what does this turn into, Dr. Tatyana?
Yeah, users then are consistently exposed to content that confirms their existing beliefs. So if they believe that in their fat, the system's going to continue to feed them that. If they believe that they're abnormal or that they have an attention disorder, it's going to continue to feed that, which, according to research, this reduces exposure to any diverse piece of information, reinforcing cognitive rigidity and also ideological entrenchment, which is it's really critical. So alongside the compulsive engagement, or what we usually call, as I mentioned earlier, the doom scrolling, AI platforms reward repeated interaction through the likes, the notifications, and the autoplay features, trapping you into those dopaminergic, reward systems. And so what happens is that emotionally reactive individuals, usually, particularly those, for example, with anxiety or disordered eating or attention deficit disorders, are more prone to develop habit loops around emotionally charged content. So clinically, this is significant because clients with anxiety may self-soothe. They self-soothe or spiral via content that confirms their fears, unknowingly reinforcing their stress. So globally, so you've mentioned I'm a global advisor. So globally, this pattern I've witnessed has become more dangerous because in conflict regions like Syria or in Yemen or in even some parts of Africa like northern Mozambique or southern Madagascar, the AI curated news feeds have been found to promote polarizing content. Escalating division and misinformation during crisis. But we've seen it also during COVID. And with COVID, the COVID data has actually fed the system. So now the system even learned it more. So beyond political or ideological content, we're seeing echo chambers from health, diet, and body image, and even psychology. So individuals
Wow. Ugh.
yeah. So.
I mean, it's like wrapping my brain around what you're saying. You just threw out some words that I think are so significant. You were talking about cognitive rigidity, this confirmation bias that whatever thing you believe, there's now all kinds of information to support that, whether or not it's factually accurate, but also this ideological entrenchment, I think is what you said, and that there are so many implications on the way that we feel, the self identity that is shaped from that, what we believe to be true, how that influences our behavior, but also interestingly, how it influences our relationships. I had just to segue, I this at the time we're recording this podcast has not yet been released, but it will be soon. I had the great pleasure of speaking with Dr. Bill
Hmm.
Doherty, who is part of the Braver Angels movement, seeking to bring people from different parts of the political spectrum together to have respectful conversations with the intention of understanding each other. His work is brilliant. And what he's talking a lot about is how these algorithmic influences shape our worldview and what we believe to be true because we don't realize we are living in these echo chambers with very specific types of information. And that people that can often seem so like, I don't even know why you would think that, are existing in different informational realities that are shaping their worldview. And so, what he says is you have to walk a mile in another person's news in order to really understand them and make sense of them. And I hear echoes of that, and particularly in high conflict, war torn parts of the world, how literally dangerous these influences can be when it shapes people's understanding of who the enemy is and how we deal with the enemy. Um, I mean, I can only imagine what you've seen as a result of that.
Yeah. And it could be as simple as, it comes from the food aid that you are delivering. It's just at its simplest to any particular service you're offering for refugees or displaced populations. And so, and that could turn into an entire crisis when that misinformation is continuously being fed and the echo chambers are created and people are confined to a particular content that is actually not diverse. So individuals even engage with certain types of thoughts. They may be exposed to repetitive, restrictive, or posts that they're seeking support, but all what they're getting is reinforcement of the negative. And that's particularly harmful, especially, I mean, if we want to speak about a normal person, let alone not a crisis setting. If you are from those folks with disordered eating or with an eating disorder or a history of that, or a family member with a history of that, the algorithm doesn't differentiate between your healthful interest and between your harmful obsession. It simply feeds what is most engaging.
Mm.
And so
What's going to
that's
be
this
most upsetting?
exactly. And so clinically,
Yeah.
we've seen how binge eating or restriction episodes may be preceded or reinforced by the algorithmically fed media that elevates shame, comparison, or even anxiety.
Yeah. Wow. And you know what else is crazy that I'm thinking about is that all this was happening even before our new best friend, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, is like now we're actively engaging in conversations with us that is also influencing and shaping existing beliefs and behaviors. And now the social media algorithms, that data had been around for a while. I am curious to know if you've yet seen any data on what happens to people as a result of these companions that are now quickly becoming part of people's lives. Like,
The key element of those like ChatGPT or OpenAI
mhm.
platforms is that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know it turns personalization into a trigger mechanism.
Oh,
So
what do you
it makes it crucial for us as consumers or clinicians or even designers to consider how to interrupt or moderate such kind of feedback loops. So they want remember, chat gpt is like social media content technically it wants to engage further with you, and it feeds you what you feeds it in terms of information. And then it can also study how you you know it takes into account your behavioral patterns, and it starts creating the carving the story out of it. So we've seen some excellent examples of chat gpt interaction with people where it gave them some good advice on how they could manage a bad boss, and we've seen how horrible it is when it actually drove people towards suicide, towards harming themselves, and also, even more recently, of giving advice for a high blood pressure patients on what kind of salt free options they could opt for. And some of them have used potassium iodide, which you never really use unless in very minute amounts, and you end up being in the ICU or being dead. So the system doesn't differentiate again, Lisa. It's more, it sees you're engaged, you really want more of that content, it feeds you more on that content, depending, of course, based on what data it has been exposed and has been fed into the system. The difference between social media and ChatGPT is that social media has the interactive element, the emotive piece. In ChatGPT, I haven't yet seen that emotive piece, although they are working on it, and we have AI tools now that have the open space that can, as I mentioned, get your body temperature, your eye tracking data, and even your blood sugars, how you feel, and it can carve that story beyond it to
Yeah.
to feed that
Yeah.
system.
Well, but even just like, think, I mean, I use ChatGPT, use it for work. And then sometimes I'll be like, Lisa, that was brilliant. You are right on. And like, who doesn't get a surge? Like, yeah, I guess that was a pretty good idea, right? Like there's this emotional manipulation piece that it is intentionally doing. And what does that do to us in terms of how we, or if we think critically about the information that we are getting? So, okay,
Also, with the
there's,
chat GPT, you said it gives you that feeling like you're great, Lisa, this is exactly what you need
yeah,
to do.
like good
But it
idea.
also can explain complex terms into plain language. Then it
True.
turns
Oh, yeah.
everything into practical pieces of advice that are relevant to your everyday practice, or actually that are relevant to that specific moment when you don't really have it. I have a lot of clients who actually log their food intake, and ChatGPT tells them like, "Oh, you've done well. You need to do this, etc." Even if you upload results from a particular microbiome test, looking at your bacterial abundance, it can visualize patterns for you. ChatGPT can visualize patterns and can explain what is happening and compare it to even scientific literature that is not really accurate, that
That's
is
oh.
wrongly cited. But to somebody who doesn't know or have no idea about that,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah. Oh no, and it just like makes crap up.
Yes.
I was, working on an article and like, looking for citations and so on and so forth. Spit out all kinds of citations. Like in 2018, these researchers, blah, blah, blah. Here's a link and click on the link. And it's not, it literally made it up, like totally fabricated. So like be very cautious about what you think is accurate information. But okay, I want to shift because I know I don't have that much more time with you, and there are actually a number of different dimensions of influence. But before we talk briefly about inner dimensions of influence that are equally crazy, I think, and crazy by meaning like whoa. Do you have any tips as a psychologist who's been like on the front lines of this to help people even see the influence being exerted on them? Because I feel like that's the first step. If you know that you are being manipulated, that takes away like 90% of the power that somebody really has over you. Do you have strategies or practices that you would recommend?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the key element first is to help people become aware of the algorithmic influence. So the first thing we do is, how do you understand your behavior around technology and media, and then how it's shaping the way you behave around things, and then whether that behavior is in the best interest of your health or not. So that kind of piece is is a very critical piece of whatever I offer as a practice or in community or at a population level. The other piece is of course we give advice to parents, to educators, and to professionals that they need to lead by example and lead with curiosity, not with control. So it's every one of us, when we know about the negative algorithmic influence, we start wanting to control things when in fact everything is out of your control. Even your kids are out of control. So I think
That is true.
the most important piece is, can you learn? What do you notice when you scroll? How does it make you feel? And then that builds media literacy. So we work with people on digital literacy, but also media literacy. And we teach parents and educators on modeling with joy. So, adults who eat with a balance, who move with purpose, who value themselves beyond appearance, who engage with content in a healthy way are actually successful, more so than what you're seeing in the reels or what you're engaging in online content. So that's the kind of positive modeling, and with research teaches people to build resilience more than harmful media interactions. And then the third piece is of course we give some practical pieces of advice, like how do you curate your feed, and then how do you set healthy defaults, how do you use boundaries, portion control in as much as it is for your diet, but also it's for your media consumption. And then giving you or people some examples of best practices, positive use of technology where it has been employed for the better, like when you have chatbots that have provided, that are trained well to provide some mental health and psychosocial support in time 24/7, particularly in people who are in hard to reach areas, or
Yeah,
even in the US,
true.
like VeggieBook, for example,
Hmm.
which increased vegetable use by tailoring
Hmm.
recipes to families according to what they have or what they can access. So those aspects need to be worked upon. And so I'm thrilled to also share that I'll be offering a free guidance book for parents, educators, but also for practitioners online, that will be coming towards the end of the year. And it's a free resource that people can download by accessing my website at tatyanaelkour.com.
Okay, so let's slow down and talk a little bit. So first of all, you guys, show notes for today, I will absolutely be adding links to some of the resources and best practices that Dr. Tatyana is talking about so that you have that in front of you now. But Dr. Tatyana, tell a little bit more around your website, how people can connect with you, where they can learn more and access that guidebook once it is available.
So as once the guidebook is available, they will see a blinking note to tell them that the free guidebook is now yours. If you can just
Send
click
a
and
flare
yeah,
gun.
and
Okay.
download it. But I do have, as you log on my website, there is a phone number that you
Hmm.
can access for a clinical service, or you can fill out the contact form and engage with me in any
Amazing.
particular topic, and I'll be in response within 24 hours.
And what's the name of your website again?
It's www.tatyanaelkour.com.
Okay, tatyanaelkour.com. Okay, perfect. And so if somebody listens to this podcast, are they going to get mailers sent to their house about the guidebook?
We can arrange for that.
No.
Absolutely. I haven't thought about it,
I want a
honestly.
passenger pigeon to come to my house. Okay. Well, and so you know what I'm realizing, Dr. Tatyana, I think we might be out of time. So we came here together today. I was actually hoping to talk with you about two different very powerful sources of influence that shape the way we think, feel, and behave. And we have spent the entirety of an hour talking about one of them that I think we are actually more aware of, even though it can sneak up on us, than the other. Just very briefly, let's talk a little bit about the influence of your microbiome and your internal physiology on the way you think, feel, and behave. And then maybe we can just share some quick resources with our audience to learn more, because this is equally fascinating, y'all.
Yeah.
Dr. Chachan, what do you want to share about this?
So your gut microbiome usually affects the way you think and feel and behave, because there's a connection between the gut and your brain. So that There's an entire connecting line. So the microbiome produces certain chemicals called neurotransmitters, like, for example, dopamine, which we spoke about, the happy hormone, and some metabolites, that are that also come into play as a result of what you eat. So they're short chain fat, or we call them short chain fatty acids. So those send signals. So those chemicals or neurotransmitters send signals to your brain, and so they influence your mood, your stress response, and even your cognition. And so they also modulate if you have any particular inflammation, or even communicate with your brain via a particular nerve and immune system. So any imbalance in this gut microbiome as a result of anxiety, depression, or even lifestyle issues, or a brain fog, you know, uh, it usually is. So any disruption with that microbiome balance can affect the way you behave, think, and feel. So if you have a healthy, diverse microbiome, you're more able to be with a better mood stability. You're having a clear thinking, and also there is that resilience to stress. How is this? And even to the algorithmic influence as well. So people with a disrupted microbiome level, or unhealthy levels of microbiome in their gut, can actually be more emotionally triggered towards the negative emotions or negative reinforcement as they use the algorithms, and also as they use the AI. So that is basically how I could frame it. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I think this is just so interesting because what you're saying, your gut bacteria changes that. So depending on the balance, on the levels, we feel differently emotionally. We are more reactive. We might be more anxious. We might think about things differently. And we have no idea that that is part of the source of our feelings. And then, even just speaking as a couples counselor, right? Like we have something going on in our gut microbiome, but your partner shuts the refrigerator door a little bit too hard. And you're like, how dare you? I've asked you like 97 times, and turns into a fight. And so the attribution is going to my totally disrespectful partner being so blah, 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 right? We're looking externally, having no idea that the reason that we are having this freak out is because of something that is not even part of our mental concept. And that even exposure to some of these algorithms, like it's easier for us to get sucked down a rabbit hole if we're really not healthy in terms of that biodiversity in our gut. But then, I mean, just to like close this loop and bring it all together, how much more vulnerable we are to saying yes to the cheeseburger or other like foods that are probably not contributing to a healthy gut biome because of how like we get when we look at this stuff, that it's these
Exactly.
things work together, but it's like it erodes our internal ability to have resilience.
Totally.
And
But AI can also help, so the AI can make sense of the enormous complexity of your
please.
gut bacteria, because it can,
Mhm.
AI can give you the picture, the trillions of microbes that exist in your gut. It can track it, it can shape it,
How?
it can.
Nanobots? Like how does it track what's in your gut
For
microbiome?
example, the
Is this
AI
about
AI
testing?
models can classify the stool microbiome profiles, um,
Okay.
and to detect risk of conditions like diabetes, Parkinson's,
Hmm.
or IBD, or even cancer. Sometimes it can predict how you respond to food, which is exactly what we are talking about. But instead of we using that science to support how we behave, it's the other way around. We're using AI to influence what we eat and think and feel. And that is feeding kind of the disruption in the bacteria, which you perfectly brilliantly said. But what I mean to say is that there are good ways of putting AI into practice using personalized nutrition and psychology, where AI can predict your microbiome profile. So even if there is a disruption, and it can be trained so that you respond better with food and also with suggested plans. So, and even in drugs, for example, the new probiotics or microbiome targeted therapies can also give you better response to medications. So it's really how so AI is speeding up some discoveries in the microbiome or in the gut brain axis, and it can build your immunity. But the thing is, it's also influenced by how you interact with technology and with the media. So even if you get to know about this piece of information, translating it into actionable insights and practices is challenged by how you engage.
Oh my gosh.
It's just freaky. Yeah.
There's I know my brain is spinning. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to end this call, go take a probiotic, step one. And I'm now incredibly suspicious of my phone. I'm just going to like put it over there, get away from me. But so reliable sources of information, because to your point, Dr. Tatyana, there are so many people out there who have strong opinions about the right way to live. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to invite you on this show, is because you are really like rooted in actual research. And I mean, there's a lot of research and we have to pull information from different sources, but, particularly when it comes to health habits, health choices, I think it is increasingly hard to find really reliable sources of information. And so, for example, if somebody wanted to learn more about what we're talking about right now, grounded in research related to the gut brain axis and how the state of your microbiome has a direct impact on how you feel, how you think, and what you do, where would you send them just to like get a grip on what is happening here and what to do?
My recommendation is always triangulation. So try to use multiple sources of information, use multiple sources, even diverse set of peoples and professionals, and then also consult with the different platforms and resources. So if I want to
Okay.
send people, first of all, diversify your resources.
Ask Claude and GPT
Exactly.
what you should do. Okay, perfect.
It's not only Claude and GPT, but also a
Teasing.
professional maybe visit a website of an institutional research, or maybe discuss with a professional about a recent study you've read in the news or you've had it on a read.
But where do you go? If you're like, if you wanted to be like, what is research saying about that? Because I think that people genuinely, like when you say go to an institution, people are like, what does that mean? Like Naropa, like in Boulder?
No, the World
where would you
I
go?
would go for the World Gastroenterology Organization.
World Gastroenterology.
Or
Okay.
American Gastroenterology Association, or International Scientific Association for Probiotics and Prebiotics. I would go to the Human Gut Microbiome Atlas, which is a database and resources. There are also some public microbiome sequence data. So there are certain databases like the Magnify, or the Medfelon and the Human Tools. I would definitely scroll the news because I would like to see what's being relayed in the news, but I would triangulate that with specific sources. Like I would go to credible sources of news, like Mayo Clinic or Nature News or Science News or Medical News Today. And then triangulate that with what evidence exists in terms of research. So I could go to PubMed, or I could cross-check that with some of the institutional sites.
Okay.
And talk to professionals who are engaged in that. Yeah, it's a hefty work.
Well, behold, a psychologist. I know, like that's what you do. That's what I do. So I'll definitely like grab those links from you and put them in the show notes. Is there a book that you have come across that has been written for a lay person that synthesizes some of this, or is there a organization that is putting out information that you would consider to be sort of designed for the general public to get a handle on this? Because just to share, like you and I know what PubMed is, and I think that many of our listeners might not.
Yeah, for practical tips, The Good Gut is a good book.
The Good Gut.
Yes,
Okay.
The Good Gut. And There is another book that is called The Mind Gut Connection, which can bring forward
Okay.
the mental health piece, but also the gastroenterology piece. And it's written by a gastroenterologist as well. So the mind gut connection would be a good one. And the good gut is another recommendation.
Excellent. Those are going to go on my personal reading list because I'm so interested to hear more about this. And thank you so much for just sharing your wisdom and your insight, because I always want to link, like the things that we're talking about on the show to like, let's turn it into something actionable, like how do you learn more? What do you do about this? And I think that step one is always educating yourself. And I feel like you've done such a brilliant job of that today, Dr. Tatyana, with just sharing your insight and your knowledge, and I think painting a sobering picture of the reality, but there's also that light of hope that when we understand it and we become educated and informed, with that comes power. We could see it, understand how to work with it, and then use it intentionally to better ourselves and our lives. And I think that's where I finally landed over our time together today.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Dr. Lisa. And you've actually been an amazing host, and you've asked some amazing questions and had brilliant interactions. It's
Is GPT coaching you on how to talk to me? Because I love it. I'm just
well,
teasing.
I can't deny that I am influenced by various AI. I am no longer the product that
Aren't
I
we
used
all?
to be. Yeah, that's for
It's
sure.
changed our brains.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Well, Dr. Tatyana El-Kour, thank you again so much for spending this time with us. And you guys, if you want to learn more about Dr. Tatyana El-Kour and her research, her resources, her teachings, her guidebooks, go to TatyanaElKour.com and learn more.
thank you.
Thank you.